Welcome to Tenn Talk, the podcast where campus voices turn into career insights.
We sit down with professors, coaches, and campus leaders to bring you real stories, honest advice, and practical insights that help you succeed in college and beyond.
Whether you're exploring career paths, looking for motivation, or just trying to figure college out, we're here to help you along the way.
I'm Harrison.
And I'm Luke.
And together we're here to bring you the conversations that matter from a student perspective.
Let's get into the episode. Hey everyone, we're back with our next episode of Tenn Talk. I'm Luke, and this is Harrison. We're the hosts. And today we have on Jake. So do you want to do a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, my name is Jake. This is how I always have conversations, by the way.
Okay.
Sitting right next to people. So I'm an instructor here in Haslam teaching managerial analytics. I'm also the CTO of a company in Oak Ridge because my background is in physics. So I've been in the area for about 20 years doing that. And this looks like the next evolution of my career.
Nice.
Yeah. I guess I'm a startup coach also in the Anderson Center.
Okay.
Yeah. Like that's how I got pulled into this. Also, Luke was in my class. He did pretty well.
I tried.
He actually pulled this next question from your class. If you could tell us a little bit about the research you did on what does cat meat taste like.
Yeah. So nobody ate any cat meat.
Yeah.
Just so everybody's aware of this. So the reason that I did that, I sent out a survey to determine people's willingness to answer questions they didn't have information about. And so there was a specific context that this came from that I won't mention too much about. But basically, it was to study people's willingness to answer questions that they were not experts in. And people are, by the way, very willing. If you show them some interest and give them enough space, people will typically answer even if they don't know. So that was a success in that way, but something I think we all need to be careful about.
So what were some of the answers they gave about it?
Do you remember any of the results?
I remember a lot of results were it tastes like chicken.
Chicken, chimp, hyena, rat. And so what was interesting in that was that people answered with other things they hadn't eaten. So I think there was a little bit of tongue-in-cheek there, but also people gave very reasonable answers like gamey, acidic, whatever.
And they answered before that they've never tasted it, right?
So yeah, the survey had to be taken in order. Okay. So you had to answer what it tastes like before you answered whether you'd had it.
Okay.
That's a crucial piece of that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Interesting.
We still don't know, but it was motivated by the fact that nobody eats cat.
Yeah.
And if you see a cat that gets like road killed, it stays there for a long time. Even like birds, crows won't eat it. So there's something. It must be terrible.
Okay. And I know from class that you worked in research and development a lot. So what kind of drew you to that role, and why did you leave it, or like that profession?
Yeah. I went into R&D because it was just the next thing for me to do. You ever heard the expression stumbling upstairs? Yeah, that's what I did my whole career. So I went from one thing to the next, not for sure why I was doing it. And then I found myself back in graduate school, and you had to decide on some concentration so that you could find funding so that you could finish your degree. And that's how I wound up in nuclear physics, because that was the professor that had money at the time, so I did that. And so then I wound up at Oak Ridge doing that, and then I left R&D to go into a regular job that was associated with it in terms of the basic technical functions, but it wasn't actually R&D, or what some people say, little r, big D. And so the little r it suited me better than the big R. Yeah.
Did you feel like that was something you were passionate about?
No.
You just kind of fell into it?
Yeah. I mean, what I'm passionate about is not failing.
Yeah.
Some people are actually passionate about success, and I think there's an important distinction there. You know, people talk a lot about passion and entrepreneurship. I'm also an entrepreneur, but I did that because I didn't want to do some other thing, not because I had a specific passion for entrepreneurship.
Okay. Pivoting off that, do you think you could talk to us a little bit about IB3 Global, some struggles you had with that?
Oh, yeah, sure. So it's very hard to have a business.
Yeah.
right? And it's very hard to have a small business, I would say, in particular, and further than that, in a crowded space. And so I started a business in 2012. It's the same company as IB3, but it wasn't called that at the time. But I had some intellectual property that I wanted to commercialize. But in order to keep the lights on, I had to become a consultant back into my former role at the lab at O&L. And trying to juggle all of those parts and pieces was a very confusing thing to do. And so I would say initially the hard part was just being confused and not knowing anything about business. But then also having to have a partner and to develop pipelines for funding, understanding insurance, understanding contracting, a bunch of stuff I had zero education in. So that was survival mode. It was hard later for other reasons.
How did you learn about that? Did you just learn by doing, or did you have someone help you out?
Yeah, so I would say learn by failing,
Okay.
actually, not just by doing. So when I got started, I had a partner, and he and I thought he was a business guy because I didn't know what business guys really were. He was a project controls person. And so he knew more about business than I did, so I thought, we're good to go. I'm the science guy, he's the business guy. Turns out he did not know a lot about business, and so we had to pivot, and he had to leave. Yeah.
So what led you to become a teacher?
Well, I think I've always been interested in and somewhat involved in education for many years. So for instance, when I was a student, an upperclassman in my undergraduate degree, I started a physics clinic that the purpose of which was to help the freshmen and sophomores in those early physics classes by tutoring them. And so I went to the department and asked them for a little bit of money so that I could hire by the hour some other of my colleagues to have this physics clinic so that we could, and it sharpened us too, right? And so the idea of sharing knowledge up and down the spectrum there is something that's interested me for a long time. And it's also democratizing. I think there are a few ways to look at things. One of them is that we're always competing, which I understand but don't have a strong love for. I understand competition is important, but I think passing things on to people that are coming after you resonates more strongly with me. Yeah.
Do you feel like university is still adequate preparing young people for the job market? Like, do you think it's better or worse than before?
I think it's worse. I don't know, if that's really the fault or even the responsibility of universities. But this AI stuff is obviously the big wrinkle, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody knows what's going to happen with that. I can say that I think it's almost certainly bad for the labor market. And I know that even today, I think some of the leadership from UT is down in Nashville at this AI summit or conference trying to address this. But the other part is there's more and more people. There's more and more automation even without AI. If you look at the numbers on productivity, they've gone up and up and up for decades. What I see, though, is a lack of willingness on the part of culture at large to say that people, the average person, should share in that profitability, that productivity. And so I think we're getting away from, say, my grandparents' generation, who were very concerned with letting everybody sort of share in the spoils of the success of the country. And so, are we more or less ready for the job market as graduates? I think less, but I don't know that I don't think that's a matter of education. I think it's a matter of culture.
And how has AI with teaching specifically affected you and how students learn in your class?
Yeah, well, you were there actually for my great awakening on that.
Yeah, the first rendition.
So my initial attitude was I want to teach the old ways of doing things. The old ways being Excel, and associated technologies, right? But what it became clear to me was lots of people were using AI anyways. And there's no way that I'm going to chase down everybody who's doing something with AI that sort of they're not supposed to be. I'm not going to do it. And so then I thought, this is a thing whose time has come. And so we have to lean into it. So I spent a lot of time late last semester and over the break learning as much as I could, as quickly as I could on how to use it. So now my perspective is to teach both. And the reason I think that still is valuable is that it turns out if you want to maximize efficiency, then you need to choose which tool suits the moment. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes Excel is still faster. I can give you examples of when that's true. And likewise, AI sometimes is way faster. And what I want is for when students leave my class, that they are faster, more competitive, more efficient, whichever path they take. Don't care if it's AI or not.
Yeah, and when teaching about AI and talking about AI in class, have you seen it like slip up at times when reviewing data?
AI?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is exactly the issue, is that it's not that great. There are a few metaphors that are pretty good, but imagine you had a I don't know, like a 3 or 4 year old kid who's willing to like kind of play along, right? They're enthusiastic, but they also weigh like 200 pounds, and so they're super strong. And the problem is, if you give them instructions that aren't exactly what you want, they end up carrying a heavy thing really far in the wrong direction. Now you have to back it up. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have experience in the overarching logic associated with, say, data analysis framework, then you're going to get pretty far down the wrong direction. Well, now you got to back up, but now you're bored and you want to go out with your buddies, right? And so I think for people who use AI wisely, you can improve your deliverable very easily. If you use it in a haphazard way or without structure, I think you can actually diminish your scores. And so this is an interesting thing. So I tell people, be sure that you do use AI, because the people who are good at it are going to raise the bar so high that you're going to fall behind. And I think that's reality. Sorry, I don't know if that answers your question, but.
I feel like it does.
No, it definitely did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked about the slip up, so.
Yeah. What is something you see in students that separates the top performing students from the lower ending performing students, if it's something that you picked up on?
Yeah, that is pretty clear to me, actually, that one. It is basically the ratio of confidence to ego. Some of the very smartest students don't do that well because they let ego get ahead of them. But for somebody who's potentially not as smart or as gifted in a certain way, if they're confident enough to take steps in the right direction, then their ego doesn't get in the way and they end up outperforming the person who has more of natural gifts.
If you were someone our age, we're both seniors about to graduate, what's something you would do to put yourself in a better position to be looked at for opportunity?
Man, that's a good question. I don't know. You guys are also going for jobs that I never did.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly, but I would say what has worked for me almost 100% of the time is to be willing to do what's needed. I've seen people, colleagues of mine, friends, whomever in my life, that wanted to succeed so quickly that they demanded or insisted of their employers things that eventually I could tell you wouldn't work. I would say be willing to be useful, whatever that happens to be, not just what you think it's going to be. And also be willing to leave every couple of years to promote yourself. If you're not willing to do that, then you lose any leverage you would have in the market, unless you're on some accelerated track, and that does happen too. I guess I would say lower your expectations.
Okay. So looking back at your full career, what are some moments off the top of your head that you think you grew the most from or learned the most from?
I mean, obviously, being in business and not being prepared for it was a growth experience, learning experience. But really, I would go back much further. I worked in a lot of different, labor type jobs and temporary jobs that were not high end, but that sort of required that I was strong, not necessarily smart, and I think that there has been a loss of focus on strength, resilience versus intelligence and that kind of thing.
Why do you think?
I think it's just an evolutionary thing. I think people are so educated now that we focus on that like a whole lot. And sometimes the answer is just brute force, just being consistent, working hard, working in a, obviously a smart way, but for a while. Like, not everything is a hockey stick, right? That's what people want, is to have a brilliant idea, make an app out of it, I suppose, and then get a bunch of funding and then sell to Google as fast as they can. But almost 100% of people's lives look nothing like that and never will. So I think, I'm very interested in sort of a more mercantile philosophy where more people are in business, but they're more something like a lifestyle business. Like we need dry cleaning, we need electricians, and those can also be very good companies, and you can make plenty of money doing it. I think that we've almost diluted our potential by focusing so heavily on these outrageous successes. I think
that there's not much focus on the smaller ones.
I think there's much less enthusiasm for more realistic scale, right? So my company, for sake of argument, the most employees we ever had at one time was a little over 100, and there's a lot of moving parts, but in one case we had a contract that I think 40 or 50 people were on this one contract. It was low margin. It used a lot of effort in the back office, and so at some point we decided to cut it. And we had to sort of make this decision to do so because top line revenue drops way off, but the bottom line didn't change so much. But there are other advantages to having more employees, like you get discounts on insurance and things like that. But we basically had a philosophical decision to make, which was, are we willing to get smaller for things to be simpler, more efficient in the office? And we decided to do that in the end. And I think my point in telling you that story is that I think that so much rhetoric around growth and success and investment, fast, I think it leaves a lot on the table. I think that lifestyle is very stressful, and I don't think people love being stressed out. So I don't want people to become conditioned to that, because what are we going to do? Everybody sells each other an app. We've got 1 billion apps now, right? How big can a phone get? You know what I mean?
Every AI.
Another app? That's my point. There has to be a point where it breaks over and we're not just all selling each other apps.
Yeah.
That's good advice, though. At what point did you see yourself becoming professor, and do you love where you're at right now?
I do love where I'm at. I wouldn't even say professor. I'm an adjunct, which is, barely. I might be allowed to profess, but I don't think I can be called that. No, I do love where I'm at. For me, I wouldn't say full circle, because life is really a one-way ticket. But no, it's a good place for me to be. I'm energized by young people because they haven't been trampled by life yet. So many people my age have lost not ambition. That's the one thing that seems to remain, but inspiration, enthusiasm, creativity, and so this is good for me. Yeah.
Is that something you felt like you had when you were young? Like, did you always feel like you were gonna end up being an entrepreneur?
No, for sure not. I wouldn't say I had any particular interest in being an entrepreneur. The reason I did that was because it was a vehicle from where I was to where I wanted to go. It was just a mechanism that I invoked so that I could make a specific change. I wanted an inflection point in my career, and that was the way to do it. That's how I met Sean Carson, actually.
Oh, really?
Yep. I've been in almost 15 years ago. Yeah. Yeah.
I've met so many different people that just happen to know Dr. Carson.
Yeah.
It's been funny.
It's crazy. Yeah, he does know a lot of people.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. So going back to when you were talking about, you feel like students don't have as much enthusiasm and creativity and inspiration. How do you think students go about finding inspiration or exercising their creativity?
Well, I may have misspoke. I was talking about people my age don't have those things.
Sorry.
Like students do. And I think that's why it's nice to be around students, because they do interesting things. And by the time you've had 20 plus years of a career, it kind of stomps your guts out. Like you can look around and find that you don't recognize yourself. And I think that's something that we all have to be sort of mindful about.
Yeah.
And I think I was getting to that place. And so this was an off-ramp for me. But I was on the advisory board here, gosh, I don't know, 7 years ago, or 5 or something. And then I've been a startup coach for a couple of years, 2 to 3 years. And so this was, and then a class came up that I was qualified for. And so I sort of fell into that. But I wasn't trying to do this exactly. I'm glad I have, but it wasn't intentional. Yeah.
And you mentioned that you're a startup coach. What are some mistakes you see early entrepreneurs make when trying to create a business?
I mean, the obvious ones there are ideas are not that good.
Mm-hmm.
You don't come up with a genius idea every day,
Yeah.
right? Of course not, right? So there's that piece, and then I think then there's the other the other realities of it, like market research. Like, well, let's say it is a pretty good idea. How many of them can you sell, right? You can't sell a billion of everything. And so again, it brings me back to this more mercantile approach. Well, okay, but what if you franchised a Chick-fil-A? That's really good. There's a lot of income to be had there, et cetera. What if you got, any number of businesses, get a Starbucks or get a dry cleaner or whatever. So I think that it is unsexy to consider doing something that isn't explosively successful. And so I think people are always they're noodling around trying to find something that's hugely valuable rather than things that are pretty good. And I think that inhibits people.
This question's kind of off topic, but are you a reader?
Like of books?
Yeah, you like literature?
I read every book I could find until I was at some point in my 20s, and then I just didn't really read books anymore.
Do you like Jordan Peterson?
As an entertainer, I like Jordan Peterson. I think he's a funny guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Some of his intellect, I feel like, reminded me of you, which is a compliment. I just wanted to, if there's anything you would want to leave the viewers with, who are people in our audience, just any kind of advice that you didn't feel like you hit on.
Regarding Jordan Peterson?
No. Just success getting into the job market, going into life, just getting your foot in the door.
Yeah, I think, besides all the obvious stuff that your parents have all said 100 times, I would say realize that when people say you're spending your time doing something, I would say take that language in a much more serious way. You are spending your time. It's a currency, right? And then one day, hopefully all goes well and you're sort of my age and you've spent a bunch of time and hopefully it was worth it. Because, if you just look at the statistics, I'm 52 in May, and the average age of death for males in the U.S. is like 74, right? So that gives me 22 years left.
That's a weird way to think about it.
22 years ago, I was 30. I remember every minute of that, right? And so at some point you look around, you're like, oh, clock's ticking. Like, I don't have much time left. Did I spend my time well? Or did I spend it in a foolish way and end up in a place where I'm not, where I'm compromised? And you don't want to be there. And that is what I have fought against every minute of my life and career and everything. And so I'm satisfied in a certain way that I never stopped valuing my time. And so I would say that is probably the last piece of advice I would leave with you guys, unless you have other questions.
Before we ended, I kind of wanted to bring up some stuff that you talk about in class. I wanted to ask you about what experience do you have with house renovations? I was just curious.
Oh, yeah. You know a little, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the story on that is basically when I left the lab and I started this company, I gave myself a raise because I thought this is going to fail, right? This company will probably fail. And what do I do with the extra money? Because it may not last. And so the last thing I want to do is to have lifestyle creep, right? Where you start spending whatever money comes in.
Yeah.
So I said, I gotta offload a little bit of cash here. And so I thought, well, housing, right? Or buying stuff. And so I bought some derelict properties that were, like the first one I bought was on the demolition list by the city.
Okay.
And I thought, well, okay, what do I do next, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to start meeting people. So I learned a little bit about banking. I learned a little bit about construction loans. I learned about historic overlays, which limit what you're able to do. I learned about foundation problems. I learned about framing, all of this. And I also learned that if you're the first person in a specific sort of area renovating, then you don't have any comps. I don't know if you guys are familiar with comps, but it means basically comparable properties. So if you want to have your home or your property appraised, they go and they look at other similar properties around. And they say, okay, what are those worth? Well, it turned out that when they did that with my property, after it was completed, it was worth far less than I had put into it. So I was upside down day one. So then I had to rent it. So then I had to learn to be a landlord. And then I did that a handful more times. But it's a good thing to do. But again, I start things without knowing anything really about them, which is painful.
Yeah. But you
Good
learn the
idea,
most from that, right?
Yeah, you learn the most. But see, the problem is, these kind of stories typically only get told by people who succeeded through them. Ultimately, yeah, I fought hard and I finally won, right? But a lot of people, when they get out over their skis like that, fail for real. I was lucky that the income that I was scared of losing continued, and I was able to basically buy myself out of danger until it was far enough down the road that ultimately that property did sell at a profit, but it was like 8 years later, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm not saying don't take risk, but I'm saying, be careful that you're including all factors. Like, was that a success because that thing itself was a success, or because you had a second income stream that allowed you to play that game long enough that it paid off later?
Yeah. And is that kind of the reason why you teach it to students, or?
No, the reason I teach that to students is because I want to encourage them to be bold. The thing that I have seen that is of greatest regret, people at my age after a career, is that they stopped trying at some point and they just put one foot in front of the other in their career and just kind of hoped for the best. But when they look back, they may not have done anything interesting in a decade. And they get disappointed, and you see late midlife crisis. And I think we can get ahead of this. You don't have to spend a bunch of money and be weird like me and some of the stuff I did. But you should not set yourself up for disappointment upon reflection later. It's not worth it, and that's why. Save yourself from feeling as though you squandered your time, which is probably the most important thing we have.
Lastly, I wanted to ask if you feel like you've left yourself with minimal regrets?
I do. Yeah, I mean, non-zero.
Yeah.
But I think I can. What I think I can reflect on and cheer myself up if I'm feeling regretful for a moment is that I didn't stop trying, and I currently still have not stopped trying, and I think that's about the best we can do. And that's not anything really to do with business. That's just about people stuff, right? We owe it to ourselves and the people around us to be the best version of ourselves, and to not stop doing that. And so I think if we can all adopt a similar mentality, then we can improve things. We can survive AI. We can survive whichever administration you don't like, this one or the last one or the next one or whatever. If we can remind ourselves that we're kind of all in this together and do our best, I think it'll be okay. I'm hopeful that it'll be okay.
That's great. Do you have anything else before I close it?
I think we're good.
Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
I could talk forever. It's fine.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Please watch the episodes we have posted. I'm not sure what some of this was gonna be, but thank you. Keep watching. 31 minutes.
All right, pretty good.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.